we'll show this in a couple of different ways. So again, we can use this crosshatch here as we proceed. And we're setting Tony up about half a meter away from the pylon. He could be offset to one side. It's not really a problem. And then instruction, and again, spotting, because we know he's safe from the previous few skills, we just need to be nearby. And so the instruction is, I want you to go around that pylon, staying as close as you can to it, but without touching it, and come back where you started from. Now we'll get you go back in the other direction. So he met the criteria, and he also did it within the space available within the 1 meter mark here on the floor. So he would have met the criteria for an advanced pass. If he had taken 1.5 meters or maybe just a pass, and we'd instruct him to try and get a little closer. The key point in, well, we'll come back to training in just a second. An alternative way of testing this is to set up 2 pylons. And you probably noticed this in the full length wheelchair skills test that we sent to you in advance. If we start you in the center there, Tony. And facing that pylon. So in this way, we just, Tony, will you go around that pylon, then the other one in turn, staying as close as you can. Yep, please, figure 8. Okay, great. So in that way, you can check both the left and the right in one continuous movement. And it's all set up for going backwards. But we'll talk about training first. From the training perspective, maybe I can get you to come down to this side, Tony, and come around, show coming around the pylon in that direction. But just before you start, you may have noticed already that Tony was careful not to initiate the turn until the axle of the rear wheel is opposite what you're turning around. In that way, he can turn as tightly as he wants without striking the pylon. Yeah, that's the sort of the key tip for moving turns forward. Now, in terms of, are there any questions on that before we get into a couple of variations there? We'll come over to a drag turn here, Tony. Any questions there, Dee? Okay, and maybe Dee, if you come down this way, you'll be able to see Tony go. We're going to open the door for you, Tony, so you can go right in if you would. Okay. So this variation, are we good to go there? This variation involves using the environment, and it's called the drag turn. And so it's not something we do in testing, but it's something we do in training for those who have a sufficient capacity to perhaps learn it. And it's a very useful tool. So maybe we'll get Tony to demonstrate it first, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, all right, good. So the notion is he doesn't have to turn by pushing harder on the outside hand. He just has to create friction between himself and the wall to do that. One of the key tips for going to the left or going in one direction is to have your hand fairly far back. The farther back you are, the more dramatic the turn. Maybe try that again with the handle farther back. Yeah. There we go. Great. Thank you. And maybe we'll get you to, before I do any further explanation, get you to do a push-off turn. So this one, we're using his slats to set up the limits to how far he's able to go. We'll start you back there and we'll do a push-off turn to turn in that direction. So you say, well, you used your hand on the wall twice, and one time you went to the right, one time you went to the left. What was the difference? The difference was hand position and for the application of force. And I wouldn't expect you to explain this to a client necessarily, because they might find it confusing, but for yourself, if you just sit beside a wall and just push directly on it, nothing happens. If you move your hand forward and push, you move away from your hand. If you put your hand back and you push, you move towards. And it's all got to do with the point of force application relative to the axis of rotation, the yaw axis, which is between the rear wheels. That's the biomechanics underlying why you drag turn behind yourself and push off turn in front of you. And that can be done in the backward direction as well as the forward. So if you're coming backwards here, you can just do a push off and spin and go. A little game people can play in the cafeteria, for instance, is that we've done sometimes is to have people not use their hands on the hand rims at all, but just to use the tables and walls and so forth to work their way across the room, just using the environment. The advantage of that is that because normal propulsion is quite a big load on the shoulders and the upper extremities, anything you could do to give them a break is a good thing. That's fun. So this was a variation shown in some of the videos that we sent you ahead of time. And basically, we'll get Tony to weave his way through the series of pylons. They get closer together as farther along we get. And to additionally challenge the activity, we can make the room available a little smaller the farther down we get. Instead of just being wide open, we can just kind of narrow things down a bit. So if you could just weave your way through there, Tony, that'd be great.